Hey everybody, welcome to Crazy Tech Lab, and today I've got an awesome video for you because we are going to be checking out the brand new AMD Radeon RX 7900 series, the 7900 XTX and the 7900 XT to see which one you should buy and whether they are worth buying over the Nvidia RTX 4080. So what AMD needs to do here is either match the 4080 in terms of price and performance, or it needs to undercut it while performing roughly similarly, maybe a bit slower. So the pricing that we've got at the moment is $899 for the RX 7900 XT and $1,000 or $999 for the XTX. Now the latter is $200 cheaper than the launch price of the RTX 4080, and the 7900 XT is $300 cheaper. So not insignificant amounts, but still a huge amount to pay for a graphics card nonetheless. So if your wallet is sitting there ready and it's looking suitably fat, then you will likely want to stick around as we go through the benchmark results to see which card you should buy out of the three graphics cards that I just mentioned. So what we'll be doing is going through a whole bunch of games at different resolutions. We will also be looking at the power consumption and thermals because they're also important metrics, and we will be coming to some conclusions at the end of the video. And also don't forget to like, comment and subscribe on this video. It means a lot to have your support, and don't forget to drop in a comment down below to let me know what you thought of this video. What system are you building at the moment? Are you considering either of these two cards, or maybe the 4080, or maybe you're waiting out for the 4070 Ti, which is rumored to launch in 2023 around CES, so beginning of January, fingers crossed. So yeah, just let me know what's going on with you in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel as well. If you do subscribe, don't forget to turn on those notifications so you are notified when I release a new video. First though, a word from our sponsor.
Our sponsor today is Scdkey.com, where right now you can get some great deals on software such as Windows 10, Windows 11 and Microsoft Office. Even better news is that I have a discount code to share with you guys that will get you even more money off this software. So Microsoft Windows 10 Pro, for example, which is fully upgradable for free to Windows 11 if you want to do that. All you have to do is click Buy Now, enter the code CRT25 into the promotion code box, click apply, and the UK price, for example, will drop from £17 all the way down to just £12.76, and you'll see similar discounts elsewhere in other currencies as well. Once purchased, you'll want to head to your order page and copy the Windows 10 Pro key shown at the bottom of the page. When you're in Windows, you want to move your mouse over to the Start button, right click, go to Settings, then Update and Security, and then move up to Activation, and finally, click on Change Your Product Key, copy and paste your brand new product key into the box, click Next, then click Activate, and your Windows 10 installation is now activated. Finally, you can do exactly the same thing with Office 2021 Professional by clicking the Buy button using code CR25 again, click Apply, and you'll get a hefty discount on Office as well. Thanks again to Scdkey for sponsoring this video, and you can see a whole bunch more links and discounts in the description below. My test system included an Intel Core i9 12900K processor along with 32GB of DDR5 memory strapped to an Asus ROG Maximus Z690 Apex motherboard. The processor was water cooled, and I also used a Thermaltake Tough Power GF3 1350W power supply. Starting with Forza Horizon 5 then, and at 1440p with ultra settings and ray tracing enabled, the RTX 4080 was beaten by both the new AMD GPUs, but only on the minimum 99th percentile. On the average frame rate, the 4080 had a large advantage, which was mirrored by the RTX 4090 at the top of the graph as well, while the RX 6950 XT and the 6900 XT were slightly quicker than the new AMD GPUs. At 4K, the 7900 XT didn't really offer any benefit over the RX 6900 XT, while the RX 6900 XTX did manage to pip the 4080 to the post, but again, the 4080 had a faster average frame rate. This game also supports FSR, so I enabled that, and that provided a substantial boost to the RTX 7900 XT, which saw it overtake the RTX 4080 on the minimum 99th percentile, but again not on the average frame rate, while the RX 7900 XTX saw a modest frame rate boost that further extended its lead on the minimum 99th percentile, but not on the average frame rate over the 4080. Next up is Halo Infinite in campaign mode with ultra settings and 4040p, and here the RTX 4080 has a commanding lead over both new AMD GPUs. The 7900 XTX was snapping at the heels of the RTX 3090, but that GPU did manage a much higher minimum 99th percentile. The RX 7900 XT, meanwhile, was only managing to level up to the RTX 3080 Ti, while not really offering much of a boost over the RX 6950 XT except on the average frame rate. Stepping up to 4K in Halo now, and once again the RTX 4080 enjoying a commanding lead over both AMD GPUs, maybe to a slightly lesser extent over the 7900 XTX here, which managed a minimum 99th percentile of 90 frames per second, an average of 122, which saw it beat the RTX 3090 and 3090 Ti, so at least a small result for AMD there. Again though, the RX 7900 XT offering a compelling upgrade from the likes of the 6900 XT and RTX 3080, but not so much over the RX 6950 XT, except maybe on the average frame rate. Next up is Far Cry 6, and as we expected here, AMD is particularly strong as it was with the RX 6000 series, with the RX 7900 XTX taking the top spot, with the RX 7900 XT offering a sizable lead over the RTX 4090, which translates into an even more substantial lead over the RTX 4080, so it's a win for AMD here. At 4K though, the 7900 XT just about pipping the RTX 4080. I think you'd probably pick that card over the 4080 in this test, especially given how much cheaper it is. The RTX 4080 slipping away on the minimum 99th percentile. The RTX 4090 though, splitting the two AMD cards here, performing better at 4K. The 7900 XTX offering a higher minimum 99th percentile than the 4090, but not a higher average frame rate. Now, the game also supports FSR, which I enabled, and somewhat weirdly, the 7900 XT actually outperformed the XTX, which doesn't really make a lot of sense, but I reran those numbers, and that's what I got over several benchmark runs. But both these results, much faster than any other result on test, but again, it depends on whether you want to take the perceived hit in image quality, which is going to be very subjective, so you'll have to make that judgment for yourself. The last Far Cry test is simply at 4K with DXR reflections enabled, and here, without any other trickery going on, the RTX 4090 does beat out the two AMD cards. The RTX 4080 though, pretty much beaten again by the 7900 XT, while the 7900 XTX very close to the 4090. So again, in either situation, whether it's against the 4090 or the 4080, either the RX 7900 XT or the XTX are much better buys than the Nvidia cards in Far Cry. Next up is Metro Exodus Enhanced Edition with ray tracing set to Ultra and with Ultra settings. At 1440p, it's pretty much an AMD win in terms of minimum 99 percentiles, but once again the RTX 4080 really hammering away on that average frame rate, beating the 7900 XTX there, while the XTX had a much higher minimum 99 percentile and is probably the card that you would want to go with overall. Stepping up to 4K, and again with ray tracing at Ultra and Ultra settings overall, the RTX 4080 taking a bit of a lead here over the 7900 XTX, especially on the average frame rate, while the 7900 XT was noticeably slower still and slipping behind the RTX 3090 Ti, but still managing a slightly higher minimum 99 percentile than the RTX 3090. So we've had a bit of AMD FSR, and now it's time to throw in some DLSS, and here obviously we can see the RTX 4090 benefiting massively from a bit of DLSS action pretty much doubling the average frame rate of the 7900 XTX and offering 20 frames per second over the minimum 99th percentile. Again, only if you're prepared to use DLSS to boost those frame rates. Flight Simulator is a tough nut to crack in terms of frame rates, and here there's not that much really between a lot of the graphics cards on test. However, the 7900 XTX didn't quite manage to match the RTX 4080 on the average frame rate here, while it did manage to pretty much match the minimum 99th percentile. The 7900 XT did seem to struggle, especially compared to the RX 6900 XT and 6950 XT, which is a bit of a shame. Kind of expected it to be a little higher, but then again, it is still outperforming the likes of the RTX 3080 Ti. Stepping up to 4K then, and the 7900 XTX proving more of a match for the RTX 4080 here. So if you're gaming at high resolutions in Flight Simulator, the 7900X is a pretty awesome graphics card. The 7900 XT less so. I think you'd probably just about want to spend the extra $100 or so to get an XTX over the XT here. But the XT still not performing too badly, outperforming the 3090 and closely matching the 3090 Ti, but again, those faster, more expensive cards just offering a substantial rise in frame rates. Now, this is a really interesting one because Flight Simulator is also one of the very few games out there where you can enable FSR and DLSS, specifically DLSS 3.0 here, which we've seen is basically adds frames into the equation to remove the awful system bottleneck that we've got elsewhere in this game. So obviously the RTX 4080 and 4090 way out in front here, but FSR also doing a pretty decent job compared to the standard results for the 7900 XTX and XT. The XT closely matching the RTX 4080 with no frame trickery involved, and not too far behind the RTX 4090 either, while the 7900 XTX is actually slightly faster than the Nvidia card here. But again, if you want silky smooth frame rates, and I've tried this game myself, there's very, if any, discernible difference in image quality with DLSS 3.0 in this game, at least if you're concentrating on flying and all that malarkey. DLSS 3.0 is pretty much the only way to get significantly higher frame rates. Moving on to Rainbow Six Extraction now then, and at 1440p at ultra settings, we're dealing with some pretty high frame rates here, but the 7900 XTX pretty much outperforming the 4080, both on the minimum 99th percentile and just a couple of frames in it on the average frame rate. And 7900 XT somewhat behind both of those cards, but I think the 7900 XTX definitely worth the extra $100 here compared to the 7900 XT. Stepping up to 4K, and the 7900 XTX falling back a little bit on the minimum 99th percentile, but offering a higher average frame rate compared to the 4080. So I think you'd probably agree that the 7900 XTX is the winner in this particular game. The 7900 XT, though, again, really dropping back quite significantly so on the average frame rate. So again, the 7900 XTX generally worth the extra cash here. Our final game test is Watch Dogs Legion, and this is with DXR enabled in every test, and at 1440p we have the 7900 XTX just behind the 4080 with some noticeable gaps on both the minimum 99th percentile and average frame rate, but not a million miles away, and probably pretty much where you'd expect it to sit given the extra price of the 4080. The 7900 XT again dropping back probably more than the $100 difference between it and the XTX. So again, the XTX is definitely the card to go for here. Stepping up to 4K, and the 7900 XT really did seem to struggle here, and the 7900 XTX by far and away the better card for just $100 more, and it also kept within touch of the RTX 4080, so the XTX being the better buy over the 4080 and the 7900 XT here. So a little more example of where DLSS can come in handy, and that is in Watch Dogs, which supports DLSS but not FSR. You know, there are quite a few games out there that do that, just because DLSS has been out for a bit longer. So RTX 4080 we're seeing nearly doubling the frame rates of the 7900 XTX and the XT. So just worth bearing in mind if you're prepared to use DLSS or your frame rates are already pretty low like they are in this game at stock speed with a lot of cards. It's a tough game to run. DLSS can help you out quite significantly. The last benchmark then is power consumption, and as we can see here, the lowest power draw came from the RX 7900 XT, but the RTX 4080 showing a pretty good power efficiency here thanks to the Lovelace architecture. 456 watts, and it beat the 7900 XT quite convincingly in a number of tests. So better efficiency for Nvidia there, and the RX 7900 XT again drawing 50 watts more than the 4080 in Metro Exodus Enhanced Edition, which with all the bells and whistles and ray tracing and everything else enabled. Again, Nvidia offering surprising power efficiency here, even if it does use a lot of power. The 4090 though, way out in front, drawing nearly 100 watts more than the 7900 XTX. So if you want to try and keep your GPU power draw to less than 500 watts, you're going to be looking at a 4080 or a 7900 XTX. Taking a quick look at thermals then, and here we have Metro Exodus again at 4K, ray tracing enabled on a Lutz benchmark, and as we can see, the GPU temperature kind of sitting around 65 degrees C after a good 5 to 10 minutes of gaming, and the fan, it has to be said, mostly sitting below 1500, 1600 RPM, and here it was pretty quiet. It has to be said, I would probably want to ramp it up a little bit more in the software, but if you want low noise, then this card really isn't very noisy at all. And this is the 7900 XTX with the 7900 XT generally sitting around similar temperatures.
So what do we make of the Radeon RX 7900 XTX and XT then? Well, I think the XTX is by far and away the card to go for. It's the one that's most competitive against the RTX 4080, staying ahead of it in most tests, especially when you are not adding ray tracing to the equation. When you do add it, Nvidia still has a commanding lead, or at least is much more efficient and better value despite the extra cost involved in buying an RTX 4080 over a 7900 XTX. You also have DLSS, which is generally better received out there in the community, I feel, than AMD's FSR. FSR though, definitely doing a decent job in where I did manage to test it, and but obviously Nvidia has DLSS 3.0, which while it has limited appeal, it does have a massive performance boost in games such as Flight Simulator, where the FSR mode with these two cards, which is the latest version, FSR 2.0, I believe, is Nvidia just has an edge there when it comes to generating those frames. So obviously that opens up a whole can of worms as to whether you actually want to use either FSR or DLSS in any way, shape or form. If you don't want to do that, then it just comes down to rasterization and whether or not you want to include ray tracing into the equation. So different technologies going about things slightly differently, ending up with slightly different image quality. That's, as I say, a can of worms that you will probably need to look elsewhere for some in-depth discussions and analysis for that. Here today, we're just focusing really on the performance of the cards as they are, rather than doing any direct comparisons there. And for me, as I say today, the card to buy is the 7900 XTX, especially if you're not really going to be wanting to do any ray tracing performance or anything like that. It does just about have an edge, I feel, in the games that I tested anyway, over the RTX 4080. Moving on to the XT, and what's really happening with this card is that it's kind of becoming less efficient where it stands compared to the XTX. A lot of other results I've seen out there do seem to point at the same conclusion, and really I would definitely be spending the extra $100 and going for the XT. The 7900, going for the XTX, but the XT just doesn't have what it takes to really give the RTX 4080 a run for its money, and that card is significantly faster in quite a few games. Where do these cards sit? Well, the XTX, a definite contender for the nearly flagship crown. Obviously, we've got the 4090 sitting right at the top of the list there. You can see my review for that in a link above, hopefully, and in a link below. 4090 though, hugely expensive. So even if you're not able to afford that, but you can still afford something around the $1,000 mark, and well done to you if you can, then the XTX is definitely worth considering, but it's definitely worth looking at how this card performs in the games that you specifically play, because some of them, if they're ray traced and you want to use that ray tracing, the Nvidia card, the 4080, might be faster. In other games, the XTX will be faster, flipping things on its head depending on what settings you use. So as well as the benchmarks that I've got here in this video, I would absolutely recommend you go out there and look at as many games as possible, especially the games that you play, before you make that decision. So yes, AMD is undercutting Nvidia, but it's not always offering better value, even if in a lot of games in rasterization it is a fair bit faster, at least with the XTX, should I say. The XT is not quite as compelling, and it doesn't really cost that much less than the XTX. The difference may come when we get third-party coolers on here with these cards, and there are no doubt reviews out there of those cards as we speak, so they are probably worth looking at. But really, both these cards surprisingly quiet, fairly cool running thanks to these triple fan coolers and massive heat sinks. And of course, you don't have the flow-through fan to deal with like you do on some Nvidia cards as well, which just means it's much easier to deal with in lots of systems, especially mini ITX systems where you might have something sat up against that rear panel of the card blocking that flow-through fan. So these cards definitely much easier to deal with in some systems as well. That's pretty much all we've got time for here today. So well done AMD for getting these out the door. And if you're going for around $1,000, I would say definitely consider either the XTX or the 4080, depending on which games you play. For the 7900 XT, I would probably say wait for the RTX 4070 Ti to land in early January, because that may well offer a more compelling alternative to the 7900 XT. So thanks for AMD for sending over these samples. I apologize that this review is pretty late. Had a few gremlins in my schedule that meant that I didn't quite get this review out when everybody else did. So apologies to AMD and you guys for that. But I will be back very soon with more reviews and hopefully some system builds with these cards as well. So don't forget to like, comment and subscribe, and I will speak to you soon.